Good morning, friends. Today we are going to learn the next part of module number 4, Angoor by Gulzar. In the previous lecture, we learned about story of Angoor and how it is the story of identical twins, the theme of identical twins. And now we are going to learn Angoor and adaptation. First part, that is Angoor and adaptation. Here we are going to learn Angoor, how it is a adaptation of Comedy of Errors. Adaptation of the Angoor, the Comedy of Errors, and its adaptation in Angoor. An adaptation is a recreation of a literary story that would suit the time, place, and situation of the adapter. Shakespeare's plays have been adapted in nearly every major language of the world, and the pull continues still. Angoor is one such effort from famous writer director Gulzar. It is based on Shakespeare's play, The Comedy of Errors. As the title itself indicates, the play is full of comic situations derived out of two pairs of identical twins. Shakespeare, to my knowledge, is the only dramatist to have introduced double twins in one play, and one can easily imagine the humor that would be derived out of mistaken identity. The major source of fun in the play, Gulzar has successfully maintained this stream of humor while presenting the story in the form of film. Of course, it is an adaptation from adaptation form, and as such the story has been moved to the 20th century and in Indian situation. All necessary changes have been made to suit the new situation. For example, the very beginning of the original play has been discarded, and the scene where the old man narrates his woeful tale to the Duke has been discarded to suit the modern times. Some situations and additions, such as the hero smoking and using snuff, the songs have also been made to give the film a typical Indian film coloring, maintaining the basic story pattern. Gulzar has produced a hilarious and stunning comedy in Indian context. That's why Angoor is also as famous as the play Comedy of Errors by Shakespeare. By Shakespeare, it is named as Comedy of Errors. It is about a mistaken identity, and at the same time, its adaptation, the film Angoor, is also creation through mistaken identity. Next part is characters in Angoor. That in Angoor, Ashok and Bahadur have played the double role of twin brothers, masters and servants, respectively, Antipholus and Romeo. These main roles are played by Sanjeev Kumar and Devan Verma. Ashoka's parents' roles are assigned to Raj Tilak and Mrs. Raj Tilak. These roles are played by actor Utpal Datta and actress Shammi. Ashoka's wife is Sudha and his sister-in-law is Tanu. Tanu Sudha and Tanu are Mosmi Chatterjee and Dipti Nawal. Aruna Irani played the role of Prema, who is made want towards Sudha and Ashok and also Bahadur's wife. Alka is friend to Ashok, who is Padma Chavan as actress. The role of Goldsmith is played by C.S. Dubey and Eunice Parvez is Mansoor Mia, servant to the Goldsmith. Trilok Kapoor is police inspector, Ram Mohan is taxi driver, and Kamal Deep by the same name. T.P. Jain is the diamond merchant as Ganeshi Lal. What makes the movie Angoor more special is the star cast. Every character of the movie is well carved and has done full justice with their respective characters. The main lead, Sanjeev Kapoor and Devan Verma, have performed brilliantly. Devan Verma has done a marvelous job with his impassible expressions. Those are unforgettable. On the whole, Angoor is a must watch and evergreen movie. At first glance, the plot of Angoor seemed to follow the trope of identical twins, separated when young and subsequently finding each other one way or the other. Presumably by divine intervention, a closer look will, however, reveal that the storyline has been modified to be more palatable for the Indian audience. Angoor begins with a cheeky toast to the genius of Shakespeare, thus acknowledging the contribution of his The Comedy of Errors to the plot of the movie. The film introduces the two twins traveling with their parents, their father, Raj Tilak, an eccentric man, names by bizarre reasoning both of his sons, Ashok, and does the same to another set of twins, abandoned by their mother in the inn. They made a stop at, naming them Bahadur. The six characters are met with a dire situation when they are shipwrecked and separated, eventually growing up in different towns. Ashok and Bahadur from Dinakpur travel to another town which coincidentally happens to be their brothers. The film Angur makes several digressions from the original storyline of the plays, taking generous creative liberty to tweak certain characters to have life of their own. The character of Iguni, for instance, who plays an important role till the end of the play, is killed off trashish unceremoniously and abruptly after the shipwreck. The Syracusean Ashok, so to speak, a man of eccentric spirit, himself is an avid reader of Hindi crime thriller novels and is a highly suspicious individual. In the Comedy of Errors, Igune mentions to the Duke of Ephesus that his younger son went out in search for his older twin after the age of 18. In Angur, however, the Ashok from Dinapur seems to remain oblivious of his brother's existence until he finally comes face to face with him towards the end of the movie. The other Ashok, on the other hand, is first shown to be playing cards with his overbearing wife, Sudha, and his sister in law, Tanu. There is no equivalent of this scene in the play itself and appear to be added to establish the dynamics between the three characters. The Syracusean Ashok courting of Tanu, the Bollywood counterpart of Luciana, is not as overt as in the play. One of the major changes in the film adaptation is the scene where the mistaken pair of Ashok and Bahadur devise a plan to drug the characters of Sudha, Tanu, and Prema to escape unnoticed, ultimately ending up drugging themselves in the process. The minor character of Alka remains unexplained, other than being a source of jealousy for Sudha. She seems to be introduced only as an afterthought to steer the action of the film. The critical analysis of Angur, the comedy of errors, as Shakespeare himself recognized when he adapted his play from the Platine originals and called it the comedy of errors, is a reduction ad absurdum of the narrative of mistaken identity. By creating a plot around two sets of twins, Shakespeare self consciously draws attention to the role of the twin conceit in generating misrecognition. This play is also a play about misrecognition, but unlike tragedy that has profound consequences for the protagonist's self understanding, the comedy of errors is a tragic comedy given the framing story that narrates how the two sets of twins have been separated and the father has been threatened with execution. Nonetheless, this play does explore to the complex relationship of power and mutual dependency in the master-servant relationship that is comically dramatized in Shakespeare by two repeated beatings administered on the helpless Dromio through no fault of his own. However, in the films, we are invited to sympathize with the servants as they continually get beaten when they are cast as the unwitting bearers of confounding messages or abused in their role as go betweens. Furthermore, Angoor, as befits a film of so called middle cinema, is pointedly sensitive to the potential inversion of the relationship between master and servant, and hence the arbitrariness of assigned social roles. The affinity between the comedy of errors and popular Indian cinema teaches us not simply about the adaptability of Shakespearean idiom, in particular Shakespeare's character and plots, but also about nature and artistic form. Gulzar, who wrote the dialogue in Do Nichar, obviously decided to return to Shakespeare's play when directing his adaptation in Angoor, which is self consciously referred to in the opening titles, and he plays down the incipient romance almost to non existence. The strength of this strategy is that Angur is free to focus more squarely upon the comedy, for which the film seems universally loved and admired. The doubling between the two sets of master servant twins in the comedy of errors is transformed into a doubling between masters, the copes, and the servants, the gundas, in which the roles are eventually completely reversed. The comedy of errors is about the separation and eventually reunion of two pairs of brothers, both identical twins. Shakespeare was the father of twins born in 1585. The two Antipholus were born in an hour, the one so like the other as could not be distinguished but by names. As the self same hour, two other identical twins were delivered to women of lower social status, thus presiding in time a pair of servants, the Dromios, for the Antipholus. Both sets of twins are separated by a storm at the sea, one pair ending up in Ephesus and the other in Syracuse. The search of the Syracusean twin for long lost brother brings him and his Dromio to Ephesus, where all the hilarious mix ups occur as a result of mistaken identity. Eventually, a recognition scene restores the brothers not only to each other but to their long separated mother and father. As its heart, this comic force taken out of plants, Minachimi, or twins, is a story of the search for one's other self. Identical twins are a special case in the phenomenon of siblinghood. Stories abound in every culture about identical twins whose spouses cannot tell them apart, even in bed. The comedy of errors toys with this titillating fantasy. The potentiality transgressive and even insidious thirst of the plot is deflected by the fact that Andrina has a sinister sister whom Antipholus of Syracuse can safely marry instead of his sister in law. The comedy of errors explores one of our most needful dreams, that of finding a long lost sibling and thereby recovering ourselves. Here we can understand how Angur totally reversed with the play Comedy of Errors, but both the play and movie is having the same theme of mistaken identity. This is the similarity, and changing in the plot, changing in the scenario is the differences between the adaptation. Angoor is arguably the greatest comedy of Indian cinema. It is also a rare, clean, yesteryear comedy, unlike today's much popular trend of trash comedies. It is a real rip-tickler and happy tearjerker. One must see to appreciate this hidden jewel. So here we can understand how the film Angoor is directed by Gulzar and taken the same theme of comedy of errors of mistaken identity and creation of a humor due to the mistaken identity. Here we end for our module number 4th, Angoor as adaptation, and uh, so it is a play adapted in a film Angoor. Watch the particular movie for the understanding.